Find your purpose. Find your purpose. Everybody has one. Everybody, I bet my life on it. Everybody can find their purpose. And I've always been a main believer that it's what you do in your job that you can create impact with. It doesn't need to be charitable. It doesn't need to, you can create impact by just being smart with your strategy, your life strategy. Think about it as much as you do anything else. Don't let it happen to you. Really think about the people around you, who you care and love about, what you care about as a person, and put it into that strategy.
Hello grown-ups, and welcome to this week's episode of A Beginner's Guide to Being a Grown-Up. I'm Sam Cooper-Gray, your host, and this week we will meet Leigh Smyth. Leigh is the founder of Impact Match and the co-founder of Actionable, a campaign to create action around disability inclusion. She'll tell us about her story and how she's got to running a purpose-led business that gives her real joy whilst also making a difference. The unexpected people who took a punt on her and had faith in her and really helped her through her career, and the things she's learned along that journey. Leigh, welcome to the podcast. So Leigh, welcome, and tell me a little bit about your journey into adulthood.
That is a very short question to a very long answer, my friend Sam, so I will try. I was brought up in South Manchester, a town called Stockport. Used to be in Cheshire, but is now in Stockport, and had a great childhood. Lots going on. I suppose I was always known for being a little bit, what would be the word, quirky, if you like. I was a bit different to most of the kids. I was very chatty. I felt like you could ask anybody for anything, even more so than I feel now. I suppose that's typified by an example of when I was 12. I was trying to hustle the local coach company to give me a free ticket because I was paying for one for me, and therefore would they give me one for my nana as well. And he said, no, but do come back when you're old enough and I'll give you a job. So I kind of felt that was recognition that you get something, and sometimes if it's not what you want, but if you do ask, then there's always the potential for something to come good out of it. So I suppose that was a little life lesson, even at the age of 12. Always worked super hard, had numerous jobs. Even when I was at school, I can remember having 3 jobs while doing my A-levels, as well as studying for my A-levels. I actually failed most of my GCSEs. I didn't study at all, but happened to be going out with a lovely boy who was doing his A-levels. And I was like, I can do my A-levels then, and I'll stay with you, and then we can hang out at sixth form. But the headmaster had different response to that, and he said that I wasn't able to do that because I had failed, and he thought I wasn't smart enough. So to that, I got my bag. I walked back to school. It was about a half an hour journey, and that was my first pitch. So I went to the headmaster and asked him how he felt he knew how clever I was when I didn't know myself, because I had never studied. I didn't really understand the benefit of education. I didn't come from an educational type background. My parents were great, but they would always say they'd need to go into school if they needed to, and they never felt they needed to. So, I had a great time at school, but I just didn't study. So for I did the deal with him, and he said that I was able to if I reset my GCSEs, and he would give me a maximum of 2 A-levels, he would let me restudy. So I did, and wow. I got really good marks in my A-levels. One of my exams, I think, was the best in Greater Manchester. So I was so pleased with that. And it really demonstrated to me that if I put my mind to anything, I can't be a ballerina. I've not got the body for it. But, if I put my mind to anything, then you can achieve anything in life if you have a plan. And I loved that process. I loved going to Manchester University. I had to get 2 buses to get there. I love the smell of the books. I love the smell of the library. I don't know if you know Central Library in Manchester. It's the most beautiful building. It is a real building of significance to me because it demonstrated to me that I had a brain and that I could achieve if I put my mind to it. So, so I did well. Then went to a university in Birmingham, was able to, I really wanted to do well. I think I'd given myself a little bit of a boost and thought I could achieve anything. So there was a placement year as part of my course, and there were some jobs going in Boots the chemist. And I'd always been interested in kind of cosmetics and toiletries and products. And so I really went for it. I did 2 weeks of studying for that interview to see if I could get onto their placement scheme. And I did it. And I did a competitive analysis in the old days where things were sticky labelled on prices. I had one arm with Boots prices, one arm with Superdrug prices, and I studied the difference between the prices to really be able to talk to Boots about a pitch as to why I felt I could help them. Got a job in the hair care team and really enjoyed it. But at that same time, discovered all sorts of things because I'd been quite diligent academically since the point of my A-levels. Even in my first years of university, I just wasn't having that kind of experience. I was studying. I remember somebody saying to me, "Do you think you're at Oxford or something?" Because I was like literally tying my books up as I went into poly, like it was Birmingham Poly. I was like, didn't know who I thought I was, but I really enjoyed the studying side of it. But in my third year, I discovered pubs, I discovered the social life. I think I even started smoking. So yeah, so I had a great year for Boots Hair Care, and I'll never forget it. And then as soon as I finished my degree, I went off to Birmingham to get off to London, really for the first job that I could find, which happened to be in distribution. And it was back in the days when automatic replenishment didn't happen. So you're literally keying. I remember miskeying the number, and somebody, unfortunately, in the Birmingham warehouse had to pick 1,000 pairs of size 14 pants because I'd miskeyed. And that was it was a great team and experience. But yeah, I quickly learned again, if I work hard, I would get promoted. But I hadn't really thought about a life strategy back then. I was just kind of working as hard as I could, getting promoted as quickly as I could, moving companies. So I moved companies every 2 years. And to the point when I was in my late 20s, early 30s, and I was in distribution, and somebody offered me a job in skincare, but it was a sideways move. It was a lateral move. And that's, as I said earlier, where I'd always wanted to be. I was head of distribution for Superdrug Christmas stock, which was exciting because I'd work at how many crackers could fill in a lorry and what have you. But I took the opportunity to find out about this job. I got offered the job, but it was a sideways move. And then my boss found out and said, actually, if you stay, we'll promote you, we'll give you a car, all those kind of things. So I went from having a little Fiat 500 to a nice little sports car. But then kind of regretted not making that decision because I think I would have really liked to have gone into buying rather than logistics at that point in my career. But I got whisked away with the shininess of this new car compared to my old banger that was sat outside in the Superdrug car park. So yeah, but it was an interesting time for me.
And that tenaciousness has clearly always been there, right? The 12-year-old hustling with the bus company. I mean, the confidence of walking into your headmaster's office at 16 and going, actually, you're wrong, you need to give me a chance. Where does that come from?
It was deeply instilled in me as a child. Deeply instilled in me that my dad and my mum came from very working class backgrounds. They'd achieved a lot in their life. My mum was an entrepreneur running a local shop. My dad was a builder. He'd built the 3 houses that we lived in. And he'd been able to achieve everything that he wanted to in life. And so he'd always instilled in me and my sisters that if you want anything, you must, you can, and you will. Those were the 3 things that they used to say. And so that, coupled with his phrase of the worst thing that anybody can ever say to you is no. What have you got to lose? What have you got to lose? And most of the time you won't see those people again. You've got to be careful when you're at work, what you ask for and stuff. But, most of the time you won't see some of those people again. And it could be really helpful for them. It could be really helpful for them. The guy at the bus company, he might have wanted somebody great on sales on his front desk and not have to pay the wages of a 28-year-old, at 16. So it can work out for everybody. It's always about doing a deal. You can always do a deal with people. And that coupled, I guess, with wanting to help people, I think has just been always a big part of me and who I am. So yeah, it's definitely to do with my parents, I think.
I love that. And it's clearly deeply instilled in you, very, very clearly.
Yeah.
And as is that kind of paying it forward piece of kind of helping others as well. I know that's very much. And that brings me to, how did you get from working in logistics in your little sports car to what you do today?
That's well, I've got a story about that as well. So
excellent.
I unfortunately, as happens to all of us, I kept on getting promoted, and then I got asked to join Dixon's Stores Group International, DSGI at the time then, which is obviously now Couriers, etc., including PC World. And I went to work for the group in logistics. And then in 2005, on the 4th of October, I got a phone call while I was in the middle of the trading floor, actually, in PC World, that my father had passed suddenly. And it just completely wiped the floor from beneath my feet, to the point where I think I actually lay down on the office floor in the middle of the office in front of everybody. I think there was about 300, 400 people in the head office in Henley back then. And, it completely wiped me. I've never known, and I still don't know anything like grief. And it really made me reflect on my life and where I was going with it. And then I'd had my firstborn child, I think, Tom. I've got 3 children. One I got for free is my stepson, and then Tom, and then Evan. And with Tom, I had just had him, and I'd come back on. They were talking to me about doing an executive development program to kind of rise through the ranks to director. And I was still quite young, so it was great that they were offering me this opportunity. But I'd just come off maternity leave, and I didn't even know what words they were talking about. I'd forgotten them all, all the business kind of acronyms and stuff.
Yeah.
And then when my father passed, I was just like, I don't want to be a director in logistics. I can go and build one because I enjoy the team and I love the people I work with, but I can't direct in logistics. I don't have the passion for it. So I spoke to Keith Jones, who was then the CEO of PC World, and he'd asked for my help, or the team had asked for my help in being able to solve some year-end stock problems. So I said, well, how about this? The deal, again, Sam, came back to mind. And the deal was that if I was able to fix the year-end stocks and solve a problem for a lot of the executive committee, would they consider ring-fencing my salary, because I had children, I had mortgage to pay and all the rest of it, and help me to retrain in a completely different profession so that I could actually go back to that opportunity that I was offered when I was at Superdrug, into buying and trading, and learn some of the commercial skills, because the team there were fabulous. And I really wanted to hang out with them and learn as much as I could from them. And to my surprise, because I asked and he didn't say no, he said yes. And so Keith was it really enabled a change for me, and enabled me to then lead a life of purpose. So an amazing, I bumped into him, or we arranged to meet, some 20 years later or whatever it's been. And I thanked him, and I said the same to Martha just this weekend, actually, Baroness Martha Lane Fox. And you've got Sarah Weller as well, that really helped my career. These people have no idea when they enable something to happen for you as a young person, or as a leader, or when you're in trouble, or whatever that is, they unlock sliding doors, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so I was able then to set up a role as I created the role. There was no such thing as innovation back then. So I created a function, if you like, called innovation. And I came up with 2 concepts with a brilliant team. One was in-car computing, which I was way ahead of myself on that, because that I hadn't realised that, I just done some analysis and worked out that the States were doing it. But of course they have long bonnets in America at the time. But we decided to put it in, the tech team decided, and I to put it in a Fiesta. So it blew up on the way to the focus group. So that was not great. But the other idea where I knew, and the reason for that concept was and I'm a great observer of people, and I've been watching my husband and fellow parents at school struggle with all these devices as they're getting out of the car. And I was like, actually, you could just put it all into one, it'd be fine. I was in computing at the time. The second one was, I was very observant of my 2 boys, who at the time, I think 4 and 5, maybe 5 and 6. And I'd noticed when they had homework, if it was on technology, they were so much more engaged. But if it was on flat-based textbook, they were not interested. And so I came up with the concept of young people's computing. And there was kind of gimmicky stuff back then that was in Toys R Us or whatever, but nothing really mainstream in one of the retailers. And again, I'm all about kind of equity. So I was like, why can't young people have a gondola bay in a store and be able to buy stuff just like everybody else? So we built that range, and it was fabulous and did really well. But I then wanted it to be able to be affordable for people on low income. So, families on free school meals. And so I then invited myself again. Somebody told me that I wouldn't be able to go, so I kind of set it upon myself that I would go to this amazing meeting with Jim Knight and Graham Walker, who was then working for Intel, and some other fabulous people. And I just kind of pitched this market model, and the rest is history, really. I then joined government to run a program for 3 years, and we got something like 300,000 low-income children access to free technology. So, yeah, that was really when I kind of struck properly into impact. But I've always been a main believer that it's what you do in your job that you can create impact with. It doesn't need to be charitable. It doesn't need to, you can create impact by just being smart with your strategy. So, so I then did that. And that was a remarkable time. And I felt like I'd found my purpose.
Yeah, I can say, and I think you're right. I think we all have pivotal moments in our lives that makes us take a deep breath and think about pivoting somewhere else. But what I love about your journey is you've never been afraid to go, why don't we try this? Ask the extra question and go and experience something new. Like, I think a lot of us are really scared about to take that leap from corporate life into a government role. Like, I can't even imagine they must have been a bit different in terms of how you get stuff done. So if I go back to your 18-year-old self, she'd already hustled her way into her A-levels. She was about to go off to university. If she could see you now, what would she recognise in you?
The hustle, for sure. The hustle, for sure. I think, what was my nickname at school? Talkers all Tattersall, because that was my maiden name. The dinner ladies would call it me, or bellow it out the canteen, because I was always talking. She'd recognise determination, grit, work hard, friendliness, but also a little bit of insecurity still, that kind of fear that somebody will find you out, and you're not as good as other people, and, you don't deserve X, Y, and Z, all of that kind of good stuff. But she definitely recognised the traits of being able to stretch yourself and to be able to help others, for sure. I was a good brownie. I was a good girl guide. I went to Sunday school until I was 16. I was a bit cheeky, obviously, but I had good morals, and I've still got those today, I think. And I think she would be proud of me for that. And I've won lots of awards as well through my work. She'd be astounded at that, I think. I don't think she'd think that I would be able to go and work for big companies, or, be able to go to some of the events that I go to, the House of Lords, to meet very interesting, influential people, or to work with somebody like Sarah or Martha or Keith, or even like lots of my colleagues, you, Sam, and all the things you've achieved. Like, she would not believe that I'd be in those kind of networks, for sure, because, I was doing my ironing for my mum. I was working as a breakfast waitress. I was selling credit cards. I'm sure it was illegal in the FCA at the age of 15 on Chelsea Girl floor. Like, they gave me all the cheeky jobs. I just don't think she'd think that I'd be able to do it. But I suppose if somebody had looked at me strategically and thought if anybody could do it because she just goes for it and she's not afraid of most things, obviously some things, but I think if you'd have looked at me as from a strategic point of view, you probably would have worked out I'd get to where I got to. Yeah.
I think that's amazing, and I can absolutely see that hustle that you had when you were younger was definitely there, and I don't think you'd be normal if you didn't have some self-doubt and, you know, wonder how you turned up in these rooms. It's clearly not justified, but I think we all have a little bit of it, because if we don't, I think I'd be quite worried about us. I think having that little bit of, you know, I think is really important as part of our life. So you touched on blowing up a Fiesta,
Yes.
one of your ideas.
Yes.
And life is full of up and downs, right? So tell me about your experience of kind of failure and how you've reacted to it.
I think I really struggle with the word failure, first of all.
Okay.
Because I try to make everything into a different opportunity. I just see it as a temporary setback life. I don't really believe in the word failure. So I'm really struggling to answer that, because whenever something hasn't gone quite the way I thought it would, something else has always worked out much better. And that comes down to being strategic about your life, I think. But
So tell me then about, I love that, because I think that's a really important framing for reacting when things don't quite go your way.
yeah,
Being able to pick yourself up.
which is every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every day.
So I like what you said. Tell me a little bit about that, being strategic about your life. Tell me what that means to you.
Yeah. I'm dyslexic, I should say, first of all. So I've been told, and that's a long story, because I didn't realise when I was at school, and actually, if I had realised back then what I know now, I might not have failed my GCSEs the first time around, because I did so on the basis that I apparently for every answer I answered 100%. I just never finished an exam, because I had to reword the question about 10 times, and I never knew. A-level was slightly easier because I learned the way my brain works a little bit, and I was able to photograph. I actually did essays from photographing my memory on an essay and condensing it down to 8 letters. That's how I got through my A-levels, because I've got an image memory, I'm dyslexia is part of that reason. So my challenges in life and being strategic is all about making the best of what you have and being open to understanding your external environment and what changes are going on there, and your internal environment. So I'm always thinking, and on behalf of other people as well, like, who should that people be, that person's in that circumstance. If they met that person, X could happen. Or, I just think that whatever your brain you dealt with, whatever set of cards you're dealt with in life, it's not what cards you get, it's how you deal with them.
Yeah.
And so being strategic means that, like with any strategy, you look at what's happening externally, you have a look at what your capabilities are, and you look for matches and opportunities, and you try and minimize your weaknesses, but really focus on your strengths. And that's what I do. So, and I think and I don't think I'm perfect at it. And when I do kind of any life coaching now, and I'm not a qualified coach, but I help some people think through their lives, because I'm 54, right? If I can't help people with their lives based on what I've learned, the mistakes I've made, what do? And I remember saying to somebody, because of the profound effect it's had on my life with me losing my parents, I remember mapping out somebody's life, but I was like, oh, how old are your parents? And they were like, what? I was like, how old are your parents? So they tell me the age, and I was like, okay, if you decide to do that or this, that might mean that you're not going to live with your parents in their final 10 years of their death based on these numbers. Because I'm quite fact-based. And it really made them sit back. And I hadn't planned my life that way. I moved away. And I think had I have thought more strategically back then perhaps I would have stayed and been closer to my parents towards their closing years. Who knows? But just being strategic with your life, thinking about where you're going to be in your career, not just in your job, but more importantly, your home, your family, the people that actually really care. about you, because companies, as great as they are, and they're an amazing, I've met some of my best friends in companies and had some of the most amazing experience, but they can be brutal as well. They can be brutal. And so your family and your friends and your networks are so important to you. So important. So being strategic with them in terms of thinking really with your life planning around them, I think is key.
Yeah. And I think it's either planning strategically about what you want or stuff just happening to you.
Yes.
And that sense of control, even if it goes wrong, even if you get sideswiped, you end up doing something else. To your point, it's not about failure, it's about finding another opportunity. If you've at least got a direction of travel.
Yeah.
And I always say that if you know where you're trying to go, there's a Alice in Wonderland. You and I will both know Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah.
Hopefully listen with as well. There's a bit in Alice in Wonderland where she comes up and she meets the Cheshire Cat and he appears. And there are two forks in the road. And she says to the Cheshire Cat, which one shall I take? And he says to her, where are you trying to get to? And she said, I don't know. And he said, it doesn't matter which path you take then. And I think if you know where you're trying to get to, be it more time with your family and friends and, having them on your journey, or be it, I want to live on the other side of the planet, or I want to do this. If you know where you're trying to go, it makes saying no to stuff much easier.
Yeah. Yeah, because exactly.
It's a much easier decision.
Yeah.
So talking about decisions, so that segues us in really nicely to the next question is, what is the best decision you've ever made?
Marrying my husband, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Stephen is one of life's gifts, I think. Didn't always realise it. Sure, like in points in our marriage, we wanted to chuck each other off mountains, but especially when the boys were younger and stuff, and life, you just have no time with full long careers and stuff. But yeah, definitely. I mean, he's supported me no matter what, and he's always been there. And I think I appreciate him more now than I ever have done, and the older I grow with him, the more I grow to love him, I guess. And he's just a remarkable human being. He's very stable, very opposite to me in lots of ways. And just incredibly supportive. I mean, who else comes, when the boys were at nursery, we took ages to find the right nursery for them, because I really wanted to make sure that they weren't somewhere where the staff would be changing on a regular basis, where they could benefit from learning from other children, have a stable staff base, where there was a mix and diversity of the team that were looking after them. And then the lady who's selling the nursery, the lady who ran the nursery, said she was selling it. And I was like, I just came home and I was like, I think we should buy it. Let's just buy it while the boys are there. And then we can kind of make sure that they're happy there. And then the day they leave, we'll sell it. And that's what we did. Wow. So I owned a nursery. Yeah. I owned a nursery, co-owned a nursery, I should say, with an amazing young girl who was running it mostly day to day anyway. So she ran it, and I did the books and was a silent partner in the background, and the boys enjoyed a really good team and they got the benefit from it, and it saved us on fees. We made a tiny little bit, we made a tiny little bit of money, but that's about being strategic. You don't just have to be strategic in your life. Yeah. So I was like, let's just buy it. I took out a loan, didn't have the money to pay for it, took out a loan, paid it off when we sold it. All job done.
Amazing. And I love that as a best decision. It will not surprise you. That's quite a common answer, actually, that people give us. Yeah. Picking their life partner is a really important part of their journey. Yeah. We all get given loads of advice. I'm sure you've given lots of advice over the years and been given lots of advice. What's the best piece of advice you've been given that you completely ignored?
Slow down. I honestly don't know how to. I have tried, I promise you, and to anybody listening on here who knows me, I think about it all the time. My brain does not stop. And I try, and, I've now got a book where I put all the million and one ideas that I have and write it down, because it's hard work on my team. I've got the most amazing team, unbelievable, and always have had great teams, to be fair, but I've got to be really mindful of the impact that I have on other people, and I'm learning and I'm getting better at that for sure. I'm much better at that than I used to be, but I still don't know how to slow down. And I definitely see the benefits in others when I can see them doing it. So I don't know why I don't.
I'm not sure you'd be you if you slowed down, to be fair. But I think it's a learn for all of us, isn't it? I think especially when you have that hustle just built into your DNA, and I think that creative brain as well the synapses just never stop, do they? You see something, you think, oh, that'd be a good idea. Could that make a difference? How do I? And I know you well, and your default for everything is how can I help? Your brain and mine, I think, are quite similar in this. Is that we'll chat about a problem, and you must do this with everybody. And your default is your brain's going, how can I help? Do I know someone who can help? What could we do? Could we do something together? And I think it's amazing. But yes, it can make, I'm sure, Stephen, trying to get you to slow down quite challenging.
Well, anybody around me, to be fair, the team, colleagues, like mentors, doctors, like everybody, it is the big challenge of my life, how to do that. But I definitely recognise the benefits of it, and I wish I could do it, and I need to try harder, much harder. But life is a learning curve, I think, and that's the one thing that's still a challenge to me. And I don't know if I ever will stop. I don't know if I'll ever stop. I can't see myself retiring ever.
No. And I think, we are all a work in progress, right? God, wouldn't life be boring if we weren't still learning and still working out how to do things? So I know you're going to have a fantastic idea for this question. So we like to ask all of our guests to set the listeners a personal challenge, something they can take away that you've learned to maybe not slow down, because that's still a work in progress for you.
A big one, yeah.
If you could set a personal challenge for the listeners that you think would benefit them, what would it be?
Find your purpose. Find your purpose. Everybody has one. Everybody, I bet my life on it. Everybody can find their purpose. And when you do, your life, because people spend so much time at work, or even not at work, but kind of just living. And once you find your purpose, you wake up every day knowing that you can make the world a better place. And you can everybody's got a unique skill set that they can bring to the fore. And if it's at work, you never feel like you have to go to work again. You spend 30, 40, 50% of your life at work. The other part of the life either sleeping or eating or, going out or whatever. But work is such a big part. I never talk about work-life balance. I just have life balance. That's it. So finding your purpose, everybody can do it. You don't need to work in a CSR team. You don't need to work for a charity. It's great if you do and you have those opportunities. You can do exactly the job you're doing and still find your purpose. And if not, you can find another role. I'm convinced of it.
I love it. Find your purpose.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. Make your life happy.
Oh, I love that. That's a great piece of advice. Make your life happy. So we come to the last question around advice. So obviously we want to know, the one question we ask everybody is, what would you put in the beginner's guide to being a grown-up?
Your life strategy. Think about it as much as you do anything else. Don't let it happen to you. Really think about the people around you, who you care and love about, what you care about as a person, and put it into that strategy for your life, because you only get one life and it goes like that. My husband were talking about it last night. Time has just gone so quickly these last few years. It's, and life can be great in all sorts of different ways. So have that strategy. Don't let it happen to you. And if you do let it happen to you, at least think about properly how you change direction and do so with purpose and do so with spirit, and know that there are people that can help you, even if you don't realise. And you might need to find a new tribe, but you can find your supporters and you can make a good life.
Amazing. Leigh, what a brilliant piece of fun advice to share. So thank you so much. So have your life strategy. So life happens with you rather than to you, I think is a really good way of putting it. Thank you so much for joining us today. I know our listeners are going to have loved listening to your story, your hustle from the age of 12 and all the way up through school and into business, and never being afraid to ask for what you want, I think is a massive piece of advice for anybody to take away. So thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. And join the Impact Maker community if anybody's out there and wants to have more purpose in life. Join the community on the Impact Match website. It's all free, and you'll get to hang out with us and other Impact Makers like your good self. So thanks very much for spending time with me.
I love that you got your pitch in at the end, and we will make sure that the link to Impact Match is in the show notes.
Thank you, Sam. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of A Beginner's Guide to Being a Grown-Up. Please do like, subscribe and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. And please do remember that does really help us to understand who's listening and making sure that we can continue to build the podcast. I know all podcasters say that, so apologies, but please do. Next week, we have Emmy Force joining us. Now, Emmy is the founder at Female Founders Rise. She is going to walk us through her journey of entrepreneurship, from taking time out from university and halfway through to go do a ski season, to starting many businesses, some of which did brilliantly and she sold, and some of them failed. So she's going to walk us through those highs and lows of her journey. So please do join us next week for her episode. And in the meantime, enjoy being a grown-up.